Welcome to the Damp and Mould course. Damp and mould represent significant challenges within UK homes and workplaces, presenting both health and structural risks that must be addressed through effective prevention and management strategies. Dampness refers to the unwanted presence of moisture within building structures, which can originate from a range of sources including rising damp, penetrating damp, and condensation. Rising damp occurs when moisture from the ground travels upward through porous materials such as brick, stone, or plaster, often causing damage to walls, skirting boards, and flooring. Penetrating damp, by contrast, arises when water infiltrates buildings through faulty roofs, leaking pipes, or external walls, particularly during periods of prolonged rainfall. Condensation, the most common form of damp in modern properties, forms when warm, moist air comes into contact with cold surfaces such as windows, walls, or ceilings, resulting in water droplets that can accumulate and contribute to mold growth. In addition to the structural issues, damp conditions significantly impact indoor air quality and can lead to a range of health problems. Exposure to damp and mold has been linked to respiratory conditions including asthma, allergic reactions, and sinus infections. Vulnerable populations such as children, the elderly, and individuals with pre-existing respiratory conditions are particularly at risk. The Health and Safety Executive, HSE, provides guidance on maintaining safe and healthy indoor environments, emphasizing the employer's responsibility under the Health and Safety at Work Act 1974 to ensure that workplaces do not expose employees to hazards, including those caused by damp and mold. Compliance with the Control of Substances Hazardous to Health Regulations 2002 (COSHH) is also relevant, as mold spores are classified as a biological agent that may cause harm to health. The emergence of damp and mold in properties is influenced by a variety of environmental, structural, and behavioral factors. Among the primary causes, inadequate ventilation plays a pivotal role in the accumulation of moisture within indoor spaces. In UK homes, particularly those with modern double glazing and insulation measures, airflow can be restricted, trapping humidity from everyday activities such as cooking, showering, and drying clothes indoors. This trapped moisture increases condensation risk, providing an ideal environment for mold to develop. Structural deficiencies, such as damaged roofing, blocked gutters, or cracked walls, can allow rainwater to penetrate building envelopes, resulting in penetrating damp that often goes unnoticed until extensive damage has occurred. Rising damp, caused by the capillary movement of groundwater through masonry, can be exacerbated by the absence of damp-proof courses or failure of existing barriers. Behavioral factors also contribute to damp conditions. Poor heating practices, such as insufficient or inconsistent temperature control, can encourage condensation on cold surfaces, particularly during the winter months when external temperatures drop significantly. Overcrowding and high occupancy rates increase moisture levels within properties, while inadequate maintenance of plumbing and drainage systems can result in leaks that worsen the damp problem. The HSE and associated guidance documents, including the Workplace Health, Safety and Welfare Regulations 1992, highlight the employer's duty to mitigate environmental hazards and maintain building fabric to prevent damp-related risks. Additionally, the Housing Health and Safety Rating System, HHSRS, under the Housing Act 2004, outlines how damp and mold constitute a Category 1 hazard, requiring landlords to take appropriate remedial action to ensure properties meet minimum health and safety standards. Exposure to damp and mold is associated with a wide range of adverse health effects that must be considered when assessing workplace and domestic environments. Mold spores and fungal fragments released into the air can trigger respiratory problems, particularly in individuals with pre-existing conditions such as asthma, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, COPD, or allergies. The inhalation of these spores may cause coughing, wheezing, shortness of breath, and irritation of the eyes, nose, and throat. Prolonged exposure to certain mold species, such as Stachybotrys chartarum, commonly referred to as black mold, can lead to more severe health complications, including persistent respiratory infections, and in rare cases, toxic effects. Children and elderly individuals are particularly susceptible to these outcomes, necessitating proactive prevention measures in both domestic and occupational settings. The Health and Safety Executive underscores the importance of controlling exposure to biological hazards under COSHH, obliging employers to undertake risk assessments and implement control measures where employees may encounter mold. This includes providing adequate ventilation, controlling humidity levels, and ensuring safe cleaning procedures using appropriate personal protective equipment, PPE. The World Health Organization also recognizes damp and mold as significant contributors to indoor air pollution, emphasizing the need for remedial actions that prioritize the health of occupants. Consequently, understanding the health implications forms a critical foundation for subsequent modules, which focus on identifying hazards, implementing compliance strategies, and selecting appropriate protective measures. Effective management of damp and mold in the UK is governed by a combination of statutory requirements, guidance documents, and best practice standards designed to safeguard both health and property. Central to this regulatory framework is the Health and Safety at Work Act 1974, which imposes a general duty on employers to ensure, so far as reasonably practicable, that the working environment is safe and without risks to health. This duty encompasses the management of environmental factors, such as damp and mold, which, if uncontrolled, may constitute a hazard. The Control of Substances Hazardous to Health Regulations 2002 COSHH requires employers to assess the risks associated with exposure to biological agents, including mold spores, and implement measures to eliminate or reduce these risks. Additional guidance is provided by the HSE in publications such as HSG 248, Working with Materials Containing Asbestos, and HSG 264, Health and Safety in Roof Work, which, while focusing on other building hazards, highlight principles relevant to moisture and fungal management. The Housing Health and Safety Rating System, HHSRS, under the Housing Act 2004, specifically identifies damp and mold as a Category 1 hazard, obliging landlords to take remedial action to mitigate the associated risks. Furthermore, building regulations, including Approved Document C, Site Preparation, and Resistance to Contaminants and Moisture, provide technical guidance on the prevention of moisture ingress and the installation of damp-proof courses. Compliance with these regulations and guidance is crucial not only for legal adherence, but also for maintaining safe and healthy indoor environments for workers and residents. Responsibility for managing damp and mold within buildings is shared among multiple stakeholders, including employers, landlords, building managers, and employees. Under the Health and Safety at Work Act 1974, employers must conduct thorough risk assessments to identify potential sources of damp and mold, evaluate the associated health risks, and implement appropriate control measures. This includes maintaining building fabric, ensuring effective ventilation, controlling humidity levels, and providing training and information to employees about recognizing and responding to damp-related hazards. Landlords are similarly bound by the HHSRS framework to ensure rented properties are free from Category 1 hazards, taking action to remediate moisture and mold issues promptly. Risk management strategies involve both preventative and reactive measures. Preventative approaches include regular building inspections, prompt repair of leaks or structural defects, and monitoring indoor humidity levels to prevent condensation. Reactive measures include the safe removal and remediation of mold-affected areas, following HSE guidance to protect workers undertaking cleaning or repair tasks. COSH assessments guide employers in controlling exposure to biological agents, requiring the use of PPE, safe cleaning protocols, and containment procedures where mold contamination is significant. The Health and Safety Executive emphasizes the importance of documentation, reporting, and review of risk assessments, ensuring that measures remain effective and compliant with current legislation. Ultimately, the proactive management of damp and mold hazards is essential for safeguarding the health of building occupants, maintaining structural integrity, and fulfilling legal obligations under UK health and safety law. Damp and mold can often be hidden and insidious, making early identification critical for preventing long-term structural damage and health risks. In residential and commercial buildings, damp typically presents itself through visible water stains, peeling paint, warped flooring, or musty odors, while mold often appears as black, green, or white fuzzy patches on walls, ceilings, or behind furniture. Identifying the source of damp is equally important, whether it is rising damp from the ground, penetrating damp from external walls, or condensation from poor ventilation. According to the HSE guidance, all workplace buildings must maintain environments that do not expose employees to harmful substances, and damp conditions are included under hazardous environmental factors. Structural defects, blocked gutters, leaking pipes, and poorly sealed windows are frequent causes that need systematic inspection. Employing moisture meters and thermal imaging cameras can help detect hidden damp, particularly in areas such as roof voids, wall cavities, and behind skirting boards. Consistent monitoring and recording of humidity levels is also recommended, as areas with relative humidity consistently above 60% provide ideal conditions for mold proliferation. Workers responsible for property maintenance should be trained in recognizing both overt and subtle signs of damp and mold, and reporting procedures must be established to ensure that issues are addressed before they escalate into more serious structural or health hazards. Exposure to damp and mold has been linked to a wide range of adverse health outcomes, making it a significant concern for workplace safety. The HSE identifies damp and mold as potential respiratory hazards, particularly affecting workers with pre-existing conditions such as asthma, chronic bronchitis, or allergic rhinitis. Inhalation of mold spores can trigger allergic reactions, coughing, wheezing, nasal congestion, and eye irritation, while prolonged exposure may exacerbate long-term respiratory conditions. Certain species of mold, including Stachybotrys chartarum, produce mycotoxins, which can be particularly harmful, though such cases are relatively rare in typical UK buildings. Immune-compromised individuals may experience more severe effects, highlighting the need for risk assessments that account for vulnerable employees. Skin irritation and fungal infections may also result from contact with damp surfaces or contaminated materials. The Control of Substances Hazardous to Health (COSHH) Regulations 2002 requires employers to assess risks associated with hazardous biological agents, including mold, and implement appropriate control measures. These may include ensuring adequate ventilation, removing mold growth safely using appropriate protective equipment, and limiting exposure duration for employees. Awareness campaigns, routine workplace inspections, and training in safe handling techniques are essential to reduce the likelihood of occupational illness caused by damp and mold. Effective risk assessment is fundamental to the management of damp and mold in line with the Management of Health and Safety at Work Regulations, 1999. Employers must identify areas prone to moisture accumulation and evaluate the potential health risks to employees and building occupants. This involves examining environmental factors, building materials, ventilation systems, and maintenance history. Risk mitigation strategies include repairing leaks, improving drainage, installing ventilation systems, and using moisture-resistant materials in high-risk areas. Employers must implement a hierarchy of controls, prioritizing elimination of moisture sources wherever possible, followed by engineering controls such as dehumidifiers or ventilation upgrades. Administrative measures, including scheduled inspections, employee training, and maintenance logs, complement these strategies. Where mold is already present, safe removal procedures must be adhered to in accordance with HSE guidance, using personal protective equipment, PPE, such as gloves, masks, and goggles. For larger infestations, professional remediation services may be required, particularly in workplaces with vulnerable staff or in areas where contamination is extensive. Documenting all risk assessments, mitigation plans, and remediation activities is crucial for demonstrating compliance and ensuring ongoing monitoring of workplace conditions. Under UK law, employers have a duty to provide a safe working environment under the Health and Safety at Work Act 1974, and the risks posed by damp and mould are encompassed within this obligation. The Management of Health and Safety at Work Regulations 1999 requires that hazards are systematically assessed and control measures are implemented to protect employees. The Control of Substances Hazardous to Health (COSHH) Regulations 2002 also applies, as mold and associated spores are classified as biological agents that may cause ill health. Local authority housing standards may also impose requirements for landlords and property managers, particularly in cases of residential accommodation provided for staff. Failure to comply with these regulations can result in enforcement action, fines, and civil liability if employees suffer harm as a result of preventable exposure to damp or mold. Employers must therefore maintain robust policies for damp and mold management, ensure ongoing monitoring, provide appropriate training, and keep detailed records of inspections, maintenance, and remediation actions. Additionally, compliance extends to ensuring that contractors and third parties who may enter the workplace are made aware of hazards and operate under the same safety standards. Preventing damp and mold requires a proactive approach, integrating building maintenance, environmental controls, and employee awareness. Key best practices include regular inspection of roofs, walls, plumbing, and drainage systems to identify potential sources of water ingress. Adequate ventilation must be maintained in areas prone to condensation, such as kitchens, bathrooms, and basements, using mechanical extract fans or dehumidifiers where necessary. Surface treatments, including moisture-resistant paints and coatings, can provide additional protection, while insulation can reduce condensation on cold surfaces. Educating staff about the early signs of damp and mold and the importance of reporting issues promptly is essential for rapid intervention. Employers should establish clear protocols for responding to damp and mold complaints, including isolation of affected areas, safe removal of contaminated materials, and post-remediation verification to ensure conditions are safe. Documenting all preventive measures, inspections, and remediation activities is crucial for compliance and continual improvement of workplace health and safety standards. By integrating these strategies into routine maintenance and health and safety management systems, organizations can significantly reduce the risk of structural damage, protect employee health, and comply with UK regulations, including HSE guidance and COSHH requirements. You have now completed Element 1 of the Damp and Mold course. You will now be given 5 knowledge questions on this particular element. You must pass with more than 80% of questions answered correctly in order to move on to the next section. Good luck!